What's up, Mets fans? It's your boy CP, and welcome back to the True Mets Talk podcast, where you get your latest Mets news, both in season and in the off season. We have our very first video of this off season on the channel. We'll be talking about David Stearns' latest press conference. His first time speaking to the media since the season was cut a little bit short after the Mets exited the NLCS in Game 6 at the hands of the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'll talk about his comments. I think this was a juicy press conference. It got me excited, which is exactly why I'm doing this short little video on it. And I think that David Stearns said a lot and hinted at a lot without having to say too much. And again, as you all will hear in this episode, this is the guy to trust if you're a New York Mets fan, right? I think he's earned a lot of people's trust within this fan base. Maybe some people still need some convincing, but when you take a look at the last slide in this episode, it gets very juicy, and I can't wait to talk about it. But before we do, please hit the thumbs up on this video. If you love the New York Mets, and if you're looking for more Mets offseason content, again, I'll be here with you all, whether it's just myself or whether it's with other content creators, talking Mets with Rob, etc. We're going to be doing a whole bunch of offseason content. We'll be talking about a recap of the 2024 season. We'll do a live stream. By the time I drop this episode, it will have already been done. So go check that out. I'll actually link it in the description down below as well if you missed it. And just comment your thoughts and opinions on this press conference and about anything New York Mets related, because I really want to hear what you all have to say. But let's take a look at exactly what David Stearns talked about. And he actually talked about a couple of pending free agents and gave a little bit of comments. Like I said, he didn't say too much, right? He said just enough to satisfy the questions that the media had on certain guys that are pending free agents. And if you all know the current status of this Mets roster, they have a lot of free agents coming off of the books, a lot of money that creates a lot of financial flexibility. I talked about that on the short that I dropped in my Mets news in a minute. If you missed that, I'll also link it down in the description down below. Give it a thumbs up. But in excess, a little over $179 million of money coming off the books with these free agents. Now, obviously, we know who these free agents are. I'll go over the top three that David Stearns talked about, but the list doesn't stop there, right? Luis Severino, Jose Quintana, Harrison Bader, Ryan Stanek. The list goes on and on and on. Jose Iglesias. How can I forget about Jose Iglesias? All free agents. And that is not even an exhaustive list. But let's talk about the biggest fish in the pond in terms of the talking point that's going to be lurking and surrounding the New York Mets all offseason long. And that is Mr. Pete Alonso. Now, if you looked at the community tab of my channel, that's okay if you haven't. As soon as this video is done and you're done watching, go check it out. But I kind of dropped a video this past January 3rd of 2024, talking about my contract valuation for Pete Alonso, even before the 2024 season started. And obviously that looks drastically different in terms of the numbers. And I don't really want to get into what my current valuation for Pete Alonso is. I'll talk about that on a standalone episode, maybe next week, maybe the week after. But again, knowing what we know in terms of the production level in 2024, the postseason production, everything combined, right? Defensive performance, etc. Obviously, the numbers that I stated at the beginning of the season are going to change a little bit. But I will say, first and foremost, with the offseason kind of commencing, obviously the World Series is going to start tomorrow between the Dodgers and the Yankees. You know, websites and a site like Spotrac is already getting their formulas out and their equations out to evaluate the upcoming free agent class and their contract valuations. And Spotrac, I'm just going to tell you, is valuing Pete Alonso at 8 years, $200 million. And if you take a look at the video in my community tab, all the way back in January of this year, I had him valued at 8 years, $240 million, which is a $5 million AAV difference between what I said in January versus what Spotrac is projecting him at right now. But again, I'll give you my projection in the next couple of weeks for Pete Alonso. This is not the last time we're going to be talking about Pete Alonso. And I didn't really want to bombard this episode talking about that topic because we have a lot more to get into. But David Stearns You see the quote at the bottom. He kept it short, sweet, and to the point. Again, he didn't say too much in this entire press conference, but we'll see the quote at the end of this video that he said a lot by saying, not saying too much, I should say. So David Stearns said he's a great Met. I hope we have him back. And I think that obviously the sentiment was, and David Stearns even alluded to this, that they're going to let Pete Alonso test the free agent market to see what he's going to get. And then thereafter, they'll have a conversation with Pete Alonso, just like they did with Brandon Nimmo when he tested the free agent market, and then they'll make their final decision. Now, a lot of people, I'm not sure how or why, are kind of, have different opinion levels on whether we bring Pete Alonso back and for what price. That's the most important question. But you take a look at the numbers, and I think that we can all agree that for Pete Alonso's standards and for a player that's wanting and upwards to $200 million or excess of that, right? They were kind of underwhelming numbers in terms of the regular season production. The high leverage situation numbers were garbage. The runners in scoring position numbers and the production level from a guy that was batting cleanup pretty much the whole entire season, a guy that's in the middle of the lineup every single day, right? You expect them to come through when there's runners on base, especially with runners in scoring position, second base and third base. And Pete Alonso just simply didn't do that. So, he finished with a 240 batting average, league average just around. Same thing with the on-base percentage at 329. The OPS, again, a little underwhelming to his standards, but again, it's more so in the average category. And that's really the problem that I had. He had an average season. And you take a look at the RBI numbers, and that's really where he struggled in terms of the runners in scoring position production that I just mentioned. And that's something that the Mets cannot afford if they want to get to that championship caliber level. They need their 3 and 4 hitters to produce. I think that we can all agree that Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso both had pretty down years for their standards. And the fact that the Mets were able to get to where they got to, even given those two players' struggles, is kind of a miracle in my eyes. And obviously the home runs are always going to be there with Pete Alonso. Again, to his standards, a little bit down, but you're never going to complain when a player's putting, 30 plus balls over the fence. So that's Pete Alonso. If you all didn't know, and I don't know if it changes anybody's thoughts and opinions, right? Let me know in the comment section down below. Again, I don't want to jump the gun on this. I'll make a standalone Pete Alonso video, I promise. But for those of y'all who don't know, he had a pretty decent postseason. OPS was around 1,000. He hit 273, 4 home runs, that clutch home run, obviously the go-ahead 3-run bomb off of Devin Williams in Game 3 of the Wild Card Series, and he tallied up 10 RBIs. So he produced in the postseason when the Mets needed him to. It's just the regular season production wasn't there through and through. Now, another impending free agent, a little bit more interesting, especially with where David Stearns ultimately chooses this team to go in the outfield and DH category, is Jesse Winker. We all know the Mets acquired him at the deadline, and he started off pretty decent, right? And then he kind of dwindled from there. Whether it was an injury that we didn't know about, maybe his lower back, or whether just the platoon with JD Martinez wasn't doing it for him with the lack of opportunities. I don't know. Regular season Jesse Winker as a New York Met was a little bit underwhelming, and the statistics back that up. But where he excelled is exactly where the Mets needed him to, right? Especially when you take a look at some of the struggles that other New York Mets players in the lineup had in the postseason, Brandon Nimmo, Jose Iglesias, etc. He came through. In 10 games played, he got on base. You see, the OBP was north of 500, which is awesome. He accumulated 7 walks. He had plate discipline. It was awesome to see. Every single at-bat, he looked locked in. And the OPS over 1,100 is actually spectacular. And David Stearns, with probably the most important quote about Jesse Winker, and that's something that we expected, given the history, right? His history as a ball player with Cincinnati, especially when he came over to Citi Field in those days as a Cincinnati Red. David Stearns said, I appreciated the fire, and I think the fan base appreciated the fire as well. And he is absolutely spot on with that. David Stearns went on to mention that they will be in contact with Jesse Winker in case something, can work out with bringing him back. I would love Jesse Winker back. I was a big proponent when the Mets made that move at the deadline, and I'm a proponent of bringing him back at the right price. But again, with the free agent market upcoming, with the outfielders that might potentially be on that market, a la Juan Soto, Anthony Santander, etc., it's kind of hard to envision, what Jesse Winker's role would be other than being a bench bat. And if he's brought in as a bench bat, right, a lefty bench bat, I would have no problems with that. And I think this fan base would have no problems with that. Again, if you disagree, let me know in the comment section, but I would definitely welcome Jesse Winker back. And I don't think it's going to take a whole lot of money to do so because, again, he didn't have the best of regular season performances for the New York Mets. And also, he just seems like a guy that wants to play in New York. He embraces that spotlight. So I think that he would take maybe a team-friendlier deal, or at least I hope he would. And the last impending free agent that Mr. Stearns talked about in this press conference was Sha Manah. Undoubtedly, the New York Mets ace of 2024 stepped up in a drastic way throughout the season, especially after that mechanical adjustment, emulating Chris Sale in the absence of Kodai Senga for the better part of 99.5% of the regular season. So Sha Manah was spectacular, right? 12-6 in the win-loss category. He pitched 181 innings just north of that. That is the most innings he's pitched by far since 2021, which is insane to think about. And when you think about Sha Manah and his postseason performance, it was a little bit subpar. He looked a little tired. He looked like he had a little bit of fatigue on his arm, which is expected. Most innings since 2021. And the same thing can be said, right, for Luis Severino. So that wear and tear was definitely expected because I don't think Sha Manah had the best of postseason performances through and through, especially in that last game against the Dodgers. But you look at the strikeouts, whether it's his sinker, working at the top of the zone, the sweeper, the changeup, whatever have you in his arsenal, he got swing and miss, and he got swing and miss a lot. That arm angle, especially after that mechanical adjustment, was critical in terms of fooling the opposing hitters. And you look at the ERA and the whip following thereafter, just spectacular, right? A season where you didn't know exactly what version of Sha Manah you were going to get, whether you were going to get the Oakland A's, right? Or former Oakland A's, I guess I should say, because they're not in Oakland anymore. But you get my drift here. Whether you're going to get that version of him or whether you're going to get the San Diego Padres version. We didn't know what to expect. And it was a pleasant surprise. So, and I know that I have a little bit of a typo here. Again, obviously, this quote at the bottom of Sha Manah, David Stearns said that about Jesse Winker. I think the same can be said about Sha Manah, but David Stearns definitely was adamant about being interested in bringing him back. And I think that should be one of the top priorities for the New York Mets in this offseason is to bring back Sha Manah. He is spectacular. I don't really have, obviously, any player valuations or contract valuations for Sha Manah. I'm not sure exactly what Spotrax is. I'm sure they have one out there. I got to go ahead and look that up because we will be talking about all of these impending free agents on the live stream here probably next week. But David Stearns made it known that they want to bring Sha Manah back. And that would be perfect to pair along with Kodai Senga, a healthy Kodai Senga, and hopefully another top-tier free agent pitcher. A lot of people want to talk about Corbin Burns, and the list doesn't really end there, right? There are, I wouldn't say there's plentiful options in the starting pitching category in terms of top aces or true aces. But again, the Mets are going to be in the mix for Sha Manah and for any other pitcher on the market because with the free agents, with losing potentially Luis Severino, potentially Jose Quintana, I know that Blade Tidwell's up there. I know that there's, Brandon Sproat. You can fill these positions internally, Christian Scott. But I think that with the season that the Mets had this season, you need a couple of veteran guys in that rotation. I think that the list isn't going to stop with just Sha Manah in this free agent market. But, to round things out here, this is the biggest quote of them all. This is what really opened everyone's eyes. And this is what opened my eyes. And it's something that should have been expected all along. Because regardless of what the Mets did last offseason and whether it worked out in the Mets' favor, which it definitely did, or not, everyone knew that the offseason wasn't going to be as plentiful or as impactful money-wise in terms of spending that top dollar as this offseason. And I just told you all at the beginning of this podcast episode about $179 million coming off of the table for David Stearns and Steve Cohen to utilize in this free agent class. Whether it's reinvesting and retaining some of their free agents, which they will do. Again, talk about maybe a Pete Alonso extension, bringing Sha Manah back, bringing a guy like Jose Iglesias back potentially, whatever route they choose. But also, there's a lot of free agents out there that will definitely help the New York Mets cause. We can talk about Alex Bregman, although I think that obviously would play directly into the Pete Alonso situation and what you're going to do with Mark Vientos, whether he's at third base or first base. You can take a look at Juan Soto. I know a lot of Mets fans don't want to have that discussion. I quite simply don't think that he's going to hit the market. I think the Yankees are going to lock him up. And I said that back when I was advocating for the Mets to trade for Juan Soto. And everyone told me I was crazy and just wait for him to hit the free agent market. And we'll see if he actually does or not. But you take a look at Anthony Santander, and the list goes on and on and on and on. David Stearns, from his own mouth, right, said, the entirety of the player universe is available to us. I envision us taking advantage of that and being aggressive in certain spaces. Now, again, he doesn't have to say too much in terms of actual words and the amount of words he's saying, but that should speak and say volumes to this Mets fan base. That David Stearns is not satisfied with just an NLCS appearance. He wants to go for the whole damn thing. And now that they have the financial flexibility and they have more to offer with Steve Cohen's wallet, they are going to be going after top-level players in each position category. This is going to be a huge offseason for the New York Mets. And we are going to be here talking about it. Make no mistake about it. This is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the content that's to come on the channel. It's an exciting time to be a Mets fan. I know 2 wins away from the World Series. I know how much it hurts. But again, the Mets were really never supposed to be in that position. We love watching playoff baseball. We love getting deep into the playoffs. And now that we have a taste of it, we're going to be back. It's always going to be change the narrative surrounding these New York Mets. And David Stearns is going to do just that. Let's go Mets. True Mets Talk Podcast. Hit those thumbs up buttons. Subscribe to the channel. See you all on the next episode. Peace.
Thank you for watching the True Mets Talk Podcast. Make sure you're tapping on that notifications button and checking out all the latest content on the channel. Thank you.